Hello everyone, this is Coach Wang. Today we are going to review the 2024 FIDE World Championship match, the game 12. The world champion Ding Liren beat the challenger Gukash, right? Okay, so this game it just completely shows that how could we put some pressure on your opponent without a very specific threats, right? So we can see that during the whole game, due to the according to the analyzation for the chess.com's engine, right, Gukash only make one very specific mistake, right? But with so many incurrencies here, but he just loses game, right? Even no blunders, right? He just actually I think if we didn't review this game, even many players will not know that why did black lose this game, right? So this is the power that why we put some pressure on your opponent, right? So we are going to analyze the skills the world champion used in this game. Okay, the game starts with the English opening, right? And then black played e6, right? It can transfer to the Ostok defense if d4, d5, right? And it is also possible to transfer to the Catalan or something like that. Okay, and then white transfer with d3. This is one of the favorite opening that the world champion like to play here, right? He usually plays this line, bishop g2, knight f6, knight f3. And now black transfer with d4. This is not a very common. This is a very common move. It means that black wants to fight, right? Because black push the pawn to try to occupy the center, right? If black wants to play some solid move, bishop e7, it might become a very natural choice, or c6, a solid choice. Okay, so d4, right? This is the first skill we can use. Try to figure out what is your opponent's think about and what is his attitude to this game by the moves. Right, d4 expand the space. It is a fighting move. Okay, and then short castle. And now black tries to knight c6. Actually, this is not a very common move. The natural move here is c5. Right, obviously push the pawn to occupy the center. Usually, knight c6 is not a very good idea in the queen's pawn's opening because in that kind of situation, the c5 pawn it might become a very important weapon to occupy the center. Right. So this knight c6, it might be the preparation for the challenger because we can see that he plays the game as a move very fast. Right. This might become his preparation, but it also shows well the idea. It means that black do not want to push the c5 pawn. That is something very important, right? The world champion just used it in the game. Okay. Remember that. Just remember that. Okay. And then white play e3. Very common move to just make some counter attack, and then bishop e7 and d3. So we can see that this move, the world champion spent about 8 minutes to calculate. I think it's a very easy move, very simple move, right? So there are some of the players who might ask, why did he calculate, right? We often say that the world champion calculates so much in the opening. Actually, that is not useless. That is, he managed to how to put some pressure on your opponent, right? So let's see. Let's try to analyze the idea for this d3 move. Okay, we can see that if black chose to be short castle, that seems to become a very common choice. Since we have already analyzed, black do not really want to push the c5 pawn, so that will become a trouble, and that might become the point white can use it. I guess the world champion's idea here was that ed4, knight d4, and bishop f4. This is the reason why white chose to be d3. Please try to open the diagonal for the bishop and focus on this pawn to make some attack. And now I think this might become a trouble. So it will ask black, now you need to push the c5 pawn right now. But this is not the thing black wants to do, right? Also, it is okay for black to play c5. I think that position is okay for black, but maybe after knight e5 or even knight takes d4. So white will be satisfied with this position, right? Now we can see that there is a trouble. It is a little bit hard for black to move out the light square bishop because white's bishop is so strong, right? Both of the white's bishop pairs are so strong here. So this is one of the ideas we can put some pressure on your opponent, make some trouble on your opponent's development, right? It will make your opponents very annoying about that, right? And then it will just increase the possibility he might make the mistake. Okay. So after the move here, black just play d takes e3. I think maybe this is still in the Guka's preparation because he still plays very fast. And bishop e3, and then e5. prevent d4, right? Prevent d4. Okay, and now white chose knight c3. That is I think white spends 12 moves to calculate. Actually, I don't think it might become very necessary, but maybe he was calculating about the previous plans here. So the plans in the future, right? So short castle, and now I think that is a very smart move here. A move that it put some pressure on black. Rook e1. So I think this is a very good move for white here. Let's see. So firstly, we have some potential threats on the e5 pawn, right? This is a very important skill. If we put some pressure on your opponent, put some potential threats, right? It means that in the future, white might have some idea to move the bishop away to do the discover attack. So black needs to worry about it, right? And besides, I think black needs to worry about not only the e5 pawn, but almost all the materials through the e5, right? Let's see. This seems to become a very natural move for black to play bishop f5 in order to try to attack the d3 pawn, which is the weaknesses for white. But now white might try to play d4, right? Take, right? Take, and maybe white will play queen d4. Now we can see that black cannot really use queen to take it because after that the bishop is hanging, and also the b7 pawn, right? So this is the power for this rook e1 move, right? It just includes a lot of things, right? Put some pressure on your opponent. Okay, so that is the reason, that might become the reason why black just gave up this very natural move. Instead, he played a prophylaxis, h6, right? A very common kind of prophylaxis in the openings in order to play bishop e6, and obviously black do not want to, white wants to play knight, want white to play knight g5 and knight g4 plan. Okay, and then white chose a3. I think this is another very important move here, right? So after we do the development, we can just try to start an attack, right? A very common way to put some pressure on your opponent here is that we can expand the space. Now we can see that b4 will come, right? It is related to the plan we have already mentioned, put some pressure on the e5 pawn. b4, b5, it is a very good plan. So in order to prevent this happens, black played a5. And now it might make a trouble here. Not only the b5 square, it might become one of the weaknesses, but also there is something white is going to use in the future. Okay, and now white just play h3. A very smart kind of prophylaxis, right? So I think start from this move here, white has already managed that how to win this game. h3 prevent the bishop g4 move, so prevent black from exchange, right? And besides, a very common way that after we have this fianchetto bishop here is that we play h3 and king h2, prevent your opponents to play something like bishop e6, queen d7, bishop h3 plan, right? That is a very common prophylaxis. So now we can see that obviously compared with the black's bishop, white's bishop is much more better, right? So this is another way that we could put some pressure on your opponents. Keep your materials better. Also, it do not have any specific threats, but it is just better than your opponents, right? Okay, and now black played bishop e6. And now I think if black continue this very natural move, bishop f5, white will also play this d4 choice, right? Obviously, I don't think black can play e4 because at least maybe knight h4, right? I think, or even knight e5, I think both of these two moves works for white. Okay, and if e d4 here, knight d4, knight d4, bishop d4, right? Which is a move that, okay, so use the power for the rook. And after c6, now we can see the trouble for this a5 move. If the black pawn is on a7, I don't think there's any trouble for black. But after that, white can just use these weaknesses, the b6 square, so knight a4 might come, right? Prepare to play knight b6 or even bishop b6. Both of these two moves seems to become very aggressive. It will become hard for black to deal with. Maybe knight d7, which is a move worth trying, but after queen b3, attack the pawn, and then follow with rook a d1. We can see that this is another also use a method we talk about again. Prevent your opponent's development, right? We focus on the bishop, occupy almost all the files, so obviously white will have a much more better position. Okay, so in the game here, right, black played bishop e6. Obviously, this bishop, it might become a little bit useless. It's not as good as at the f5 square, right? And now king h2, also a prophylaxis, right? And then rook b8. So black also do the prophylaxis, guard the b7 pawn, because of this bishop, as we have already mentioned. So black needs to worry about. Now we can see that in this position, maybe both sides do not have a very specific plan to play here, right? So we need to try to just strong our position, make sure that almost everything is under the protection. That is a very common thing happens in chess, right? Okay, and then white chose with queen c2. This is another skill we can try to use, is that do not hurry. We can see that white has so many chances to push the pawn to d4, right, which can open this position. Obviously, open this position, it might become we might have a better chance to fight for a win, but the world champion is not, do not hurry, right? Queen c2, we just do some preparation, because in this position, black even do not have a very specific plan, right? So in this kind of situation, white do not hurry and ask if you want to play something like knight d4, even give a chance for black. Now we can see that black needs to spend so much time on calculation, right? So we can see that actually in the opening here, the world champion might have some time trouble, but in this several moves, we can see that black just spends so much time on calculation because it's hard to find the plans, right? And besides, after this move, right, white will give black some choice. Ask if you want to play knight d4, right? If you want to play something very active and occupy the center, right? So black needs to spend time to do the calculation, right? So let's analyze. I think knight d4, it might become worth trying, but now I think at this moment here, right, bishop d4, it might comes, e d4, and follow with knight b5, right? Now we can see that this might become a trouble here. It is a little bit hard for black to guard this d4 pawn, because if c5, this knight will become really strong here, and I think follow with knight e5, white might have a clearly better position. This bishop, both of these two knights will become really active, right? So it might become possible for black to play something like bishop c5 at this moment in order to guard this pawn, and also prepare to play c6 to kick out the knight here. That might become a possible choice. And now I guess maybe there's something like rook e5. Seems to become a very aggressive move here, right? Rook e5. So if bishop e6, obviously that is not going to work. c5 might trap the bishop. So maybe knight d7, it might become a choice, but I think there is amazing move, rook to h5, right? I guess this move, it might work here. Now put some pressure on the bishop and also on the d4 pawn, so it's hard for black to guard these materials right now. Now we can see that the world champion just used this point. Black do not want to push the c5 pawn in the opening, and now he meet in the trouble. If queen f6, it guard the d4 pawn, but obviously it lose the c7 pawn. I think that is the idea. And even rook h4 was possible, help to attack the d4 pawn. Okay, so we can see that this is a very important method. We can put some pressure on your opponent. Use your opponent's weaknesses. Use your opponent's, just attack on the pieces that which is not very stable. Okay, so in the game here, right, after a long calculation, black just play rook e8, right, and then knight b5. Another very important method on put some pressure on your opponent. This is a very good move. We activate our knight, place our knight at a very good position, and then we just attack your opponent's pieces. It doesn't mean that we have the ability to strictly win it, but we just put some pressure on it, right? So black will always need to worry about these things, right? That's okay. And now black chose with bishop f5 seems to become very reasonable move, and then rook a1, guard the weaknesses. Now we can see that it seems that this is a very equal position, but actually, in my opinion, it is already a little bit hard for black to play here. There are so many things black needs to worry about, right? Now we can see that the rook needs to guard the b7 pawn, and the queen needs to guard the c7 pawn, the knight needs to guard the e5 pawn. There are so many things black needs to defend, right? So it will just limit your opponent's pieces a lot. This might become a big trouble for black in the future. Now we can see that I think at this moment it is already very hard for black to play, right? We can just show the both here. in this kind of situation, the engine suggests black to play bishop f8. Obviously, this might become a useless move here. Usually, when we play bishop f8, it means that we will just play g6, bishop g7 to create a fianchetto bishop. But now, the bishop is on f5, so create a fianchetto bishop, it might become a little bit strange. It blocks the way for the bishop, right? So, but actually, it means that black do not have very, very specific moves, right? That is a very good idea when you recognize that your opponents will fight for a win in this game. So you can just try to make almost everything under the protection and then push, and then just focus on your opponent's pieces, but do not make a very real attack. So it might make your opponents very annoying, right? Very annoying. Okay. So in the game here, I think black started to do something bad. Knight d7. This is start for. I think this move it might become the start for black to lose this game, right? Knight d7. I think knight d7. Obviously, black wants to change this position. Bishop c5 might comes, or maybe knight c5 it might comes. Try to focus on these weaknesses, but white just make some successful defense. Queen d2. Not only avoid the pin through the diagonal, but also put some pressure on the a5 pawn. Right? Use this kind of skill game. We do not really attack it, but we just focus on it. Right? And now we can see that black needs to think about if I can play knight c5. Black needs to calculate if knight c5 works or bishop c5. The plan I have, does it will continue works? Right? That is something black needs to calculation. I think it is not going to work because knight c5 obviously white might has d4. Right, that seems to become a very aggressive move here. If knight b3 seems to become a very reasonable move, queen c3, right? Knight takes d4. I guess there's knight takes e5 here. Right, now we can see that white just soon makes sure that almost everything is on, almost black's everything is under attack. The knight, both of the knight, a5 pawn, b7, c7 pawn, so many things. That position it will become really annoying. Right? I don't think black has any successful defense here. Okay. So in the game here, black chose with bishop d6, right? And now we can see that after almost all the preparation, white just placed almost everything under the protection. It's time to start the attack. d4. Right? It's time to start the attack. Let's try to calculate the knights. If e d4 here, I think knight f d4 might become a very reasonable move. Attack on c6. Right, and then white can attack both through the d file and the c file. The e file. Right. I guess maybe it is possible for black to play knight e5 here. I guess this might become the move. It should play for black, but now black needs to worry about the safety of the a5 pawn here. Right. That is always the thing black needs to worry about. Okay, queen takes a5. That was a really possible choice. Okay. So in the game here, black just play e4, right? And then knight e1. Very good move here, right? Actually, it is only move, and then prepare to active the knight again. And now we can see that this position, black still have so much trouble, right? This knight cannot move, and the rook needs to guard the b7 pawn. Actually, the rook can move here, right? The diagonal is closed, but there's no good squares for the rook, right? And now I think it's so hard, right? This is a very important thing. Black has no very specific plans. Black do not have very specific targets to make some attack. Okay, so in the game, black played knight b6 and queen c3. So I think from this attack, black's position will become worse and worse. I think black just plays some very natural moves. Black just active the pieces. We can see that it seems that both of the black's bishops and the knights, they have some targets to make some attack, but actually white just guard almost everything. Okay, but now we can see that the heavy pieces for black, they are always at some bad positions, especially the queen and the b8 rook. This is a good skill. We limit your opponent's pieces. So white chose with queen c2, right? White do not just play this knight e2 move. I think this move it is worth trying, but queen c2, right? It is a move that we put some pressure on the e4 pawn, right? So maybe the world champion thought that knight e2 might meet the trouble with bishop h5. It might make some trouble. Black will have the pain here. So queen c2 put some pressure on the e4 pawn. And also d5 it might become a threat. d5, d6. White will straightly push the pawn to make some attack. And now black shows up a4. I guess the idea here is that black wants to play knight to a5 and the attack, and then knight e2. Okay, so we can see that next move, bishop g5, the chess.com enders thought that this is a mistake. But there's a trouble. Could you find a very, very specific move for black to play at this moment? I think this is already a very hard task, right? This is already a very hard task here, right? I think maybe knight a5 was possible, try to control the plan to make some attack, but obviously black needs to worry about if I will lose this pawn, right? Knight f4 or something like that, and then d5, or maybe queen takes a4 was also possible if the b2 pawn is under the protection, right? That is so many things. There will become so many things black needs to worry about. Okay, so in this game here, right, bishop d5, that should become a mistake, and then knight f4, right? Only of the good move in this game, but this is already decisive. Knight f4. Now we can try to calculate, right? If black try to play something like bishop h7, try to move the bishop away, I think there is a big possibility that white will just play c5. A very smart move here, right? c5 attack the knight, and now black cannot use the knight to occupy these good squares because after take, and knight c7, that should become decisive, right? And I think even bishop f4 is not going to work. Oh, sorry, right? At this moment, bishop f4 is not going to work because cb6, right? Black cannot take this bishop, bc7. So we can see that white just focused on the c7 pawn for the whole game. Right, this is a very important method. So in the game here, black chose with bishop f4 and then bishop f4, right? Rook c8, focus on these weaknesses again, and now queen c3. White is still not in hurry, right? Because if d5 here, it might give black some counterattack such as e3 that will make this position complicated. So queen c3, right? Avoid the potential discover attack. So we can see that during this whole game, black do not find a very good plan. And now black just play knight b8. This is obviously this is a bad move, but I think it's already very hard for black. And then it's time to start the final attack, d5. Prepare to play d6 and then knight c7 in the future. That should become decisive. And queen d7, d6, right? c5, knight c7. Now we can see that it's very easy for almost everyone to find a way to win this game here. Rook f8 and bishop takes e4. Now white just finally turn the positional advantage to the material advantage, and that is an easy win here. Both of our bishop peers, the knights, they are very good. White has an extra passed pawn, and the black pieces they are still very bad, right? We can see that this rook, almost in the whole game here, it can only make some defense, and as well as a queen, right? This is one of the two most powerful pieces for black. They are useless. So how could black play this game well? That will become impossible, right? So the rest of the game, it might become very easy. Knight c6, bishop g2, avoid exchange. I think bishop g6, it works, but it might offer some counterattack. Black might have g5 and then a counterattack through f4. So white just played a very solid move. Bishop g2, do not give any counterattack. And also prevent this knight d4 move because there's rook e7. The queen might be lost here. Okay. So we can see that black just spent a very, very tough game here, right? Rook c d8 and then knight d5. Now white started to simplify this position, and because knight d5 it allows to win another pawn. If black do not exchange, knight e7, that it might comes. But if black exchange here, and then black will lose the other pawn. This is already a hopeless position for black. Rook c8. The rest of the game it will become really easy, right? d7, rook c4, right? Queen e3. Whatever black plays here, it doesn't matter. Bishop d6, prepare to play rook e8, right? f6, and then tactical moves. Rook takes g7, just end this game. So we can see that this game, it almost perfectly shows that how could we put some pressure on your opponent. You can see that during the whole game, black didn't make any specific mistake, but if we use the black side to see this game, it will become so hard, because almost every time black has some trouble, needs to make some defense. Maybe it's on the development, maybe on how to guard the weaknesses, right? Or maybe on the potential threats. Black will always worry about this kind of things. So firstly, black spends so much time to calculate, and black will find trouble in how to find the plans, right? That is the things we can benefit from putting some pressure on your opponent. Okay, so that is the review for this game. Thank you very much.